Okay. Good afternoon, Alicia Keeter with Florida Rural Water Association. I am the Executive Director. I am here to assist City of Apalachicola as a member of the association to help with the operational and maintenance scenarios and offer any assistance that we can to help them get things back up and running, and any help that we can offer in that mechanism, and any factual data that we can help provide or coordinate. That's what we do at the association. So in reference to the water and the quality, you have under EPA standard, and Florida has adopted those. You've got your primary drinking water standards and you have your secondary drinking water standards. And you can go to EPA's website and look at those as well. Florida has adopted under the enforceable section the secondary standards as well, but under EPA regulations, secondary standards do not pose a health hazard as stated by EPA. Your primary standards have to do with your disinfection of your water, and that's where the chlorine injection, hydrogen peroxide, your UV treatment, those different types of treatment to disinfect the water come into play. And as Rhett mentioned, due to the operational standards happening with wells 5, 6, and 7, or the lack of 7 operating, you had the chlorine residual fall below a 0.2. And when that falls below a 0.2, DEP issues that standard that you have to fall under a precautionary boil water notice for the statement to make sure that your disinfection is happening on your water. Your color and odor and things, those are secondary. Those are more of an aesthetic standard. It is not for the safety of the drinking water according to EPA standards. So under those guidelines, your water with no bacteriological samples coming back positive for fecal coliform, all those effects, you have not received any samples that were in that parameter. So the precautionary boil water notice is based off of it falling below a 0.2, and Rhett and the team have flushed to get that circulating back, so you have a fluctuation of your chlorine to get that back going throughout the system. The challenge that is happening is the operation of the wells, and with the odor scrubber being down on the ground storage tank is causing challenges where that chlorine demand to treat that water goes up and down. So at no point on any of the samples that they have taken have they been under a bacteriological issuance that they have fallen out of compliance. It has been for the chlorine at that moment when they took the sample being under that 0.2 regulation. Just a note, if you have a private well at your home, you do not chlorinate your well at your home. You pull that water straight out of the ground, it goes into your home. The Department of Health regulates your private well if you have a private drinking water well. So the city being under that standard, the city is more stringent because they fall under the community water system guidelines, and those are more stringent. Another note is your bottled water falls under Department of Health and the FDA regulation. It does not fall under Department of Environmental Protection or EPA testing. Therefore, your drinking water out of your tap has more regulated testing and control than your bottled water does. So we want to make sure you understand that as well. So different operations and parameters. So people can go drill a well, pump water out, run through process, and they can bottle the water and sell it to you. And it is not as regulated as your drinking water that comes from the city. So I want you to be aware of that as well. There's a lot of that conversation that comes out with bottled water versus your tap water. So under that scenario, that's what I know with the primary and secondary water treatments on the factual information.
Did you touch bases on the discoloration, the iron, and the...
Okay, so I'm going to draw a picture. So, Rhett, I'm going to ask your assistance. All right, I'm going to speak louder. This will be a little harder. I don't know if we got a microphone to come closer. So I'm going to draw a picture of your system and what your system looks like out here. So I'm drawing a picture of the water well. You have a motor, and then you have down pipe, and then you have a pump that sits at the bottom of the well. This is your ground here. This is your water level. What Rhett mentioned, how deep did they drill? 409. So 409. So this is 409 feet. 409 feet into the ground. So I will lift this up once I'm drawing it, but I'm going to describe it to you as I'm drawing it out. So this is the description. You have a motor and you have a well, and then this is the pipe that comes out and takes the water into the system, goes to the ground storage tank. When you are pumping, you've got your natural occurring formation under the ground. It is not an open hole like a river or a pond under there. It is through a formation like limestone. It's almost imagine like a sponge that's got a bunch of holes through it. That water flows through that component. That's your formation that they have to drill through. When they get to those parts, there's open pockets, but that water continues to flow through that formation. Here in the Apalachicola region, the formation underground is not the greatest quality of water because you have the iron, you have the hydrogen sulfide smell, you got the rotten egg smell. It's not desirable to the nose and to the eyes in that avenue. When you draw down water, what happens is you have a natural coning effect that comes into play. So when that pump kicks on, there's the water level when the pump is off, and when the pump comes on, it has a natural effect where it wants to pull that water down. So it has that tendency to pull that down. So this pump has multiple stages based off of the level. So those that understand the operation and dynamics of a water well, it's drawing that water into those pumps, and then that is pulling it up through that pipe and into your system. When this goes into over pumping, what you have is problems with discoloration and odor. So when it comes into being over pumped, and I'll explain that situation that's happening. Again, what I talked to you about, this formation under this water level, it's like a sponge in there. All of this material that's all around has a tendency to get stirred up. Just like if you take a water bottle and you pour in something into that water bottle, if you pour in like your Crystal Light or whatever and it sinks straight to the bottom, all that sediment, all that material is sitting at the bottom of the water bottle. But if you stir it just a little bit, it kind of gets mixed up, right? That's where you start getting that happening. If you shake it up a whole lot and you're putting a major demand on it, that's where you get a lot of turbulence, and that's where you get your total suspended solids that come into play. That is the terminology that they use for all of this material that's in that formation. It's still in the same drinking water formation. It's not disturbing a bunch of extra organisms and bringing in bad stuff. It's just disturbing that more than what should be disturbed. And all of that sedimentation and everything is being pulled up into the pipe and dispersed into your ground storage tank. So I'm going to, Rhett, now I'm moving over here to the side. All right. I'm not an artist, so y'all bear with me on this. So here's your ground storage tank. We call it a GST. That's our alphabet soup, so to speak. Okay. Okay, so you've got two mechanisms that are happening in with this ground storage tank. So the water is coming from your well. It's going into this component. At this point, that's where your chlorine injection comes into play. So the water is chlorinated coming into the pipe before it goes into the ground storage tank. Depending upon what's happening in that water coming out of that well, that chlorine dosing and that volume of chlorine being injected into that pipe it fluctuates based off of what your TSS and your demand is that's in that water. So the higher that number, the more chlorine it takes. And if that number is so great, there is a limitation on how much your pump that you currently have can inject into that pipe. So that's where your chlorine residual fluctuates based off of that demand. So I know that might be talking Greek to some of you, but this is the process that happens. And I will try to break that down a little bit more in terms you can understand in just a minute. So y'all bear with me on that. So I want to get through the major technical, and then I'll break it down into more bite-sized chunks that you can have some better understanding on that. What you're faced with right now and where you are, the circumstances that you are in. Your ground storage tank is your primary challenge. Your secondary challenge is well number 7. So you've got your ground storage tank. Then you have 3 wells that are operating. So this is well 5, 6, and 7. Okay? So we've got 3 wells that the city maintains and operates. All right, going to your ground storage tank, the water coming in from the storm, you have the scrubber that has been damaged and it's not operational. You also have a mixer that's inside the tank that is not operational. Remember, I talked about the water bottle and keeping it mixed and keeping everything going. Because those items are not operational, you've got this water that's been churned up and it's got a lot of extra hydrogen sulfide, a lot of extra the materials and the details. It's got a lot of total suspended solids in it that are not being removed because you have no way to remove it. You've got the mixer and then you've got the scrubber. So what happens is when this water comes in, it comes out of this pipe and it fills up this tank. This scrubber pushes air into this tank and then it dissipates out. It pushes that air out to get out of that odor out into the air around it and not into and absorbing into your water. This mixer keeps the water stirred up. So think about this. You take a Coke, you're holding a regular Coke bottle, top on, you shake it up a little bit, not a lot, but just a little bit. You see the fizz that comes up and then settles in there and all of that. But if you shake it really hard, you slowly release the top and it starts to spew out. But if you open it up fast, it comes out and it dissipates. You get rid of all of the fizz and you're left with the Coke to drink. If you leave that fizz in there, it has a tendency to make your Coke taste a little flatter because you've messed it all up. Think of it here in that process. We want all that fizz to get out. When the scrubber's not there to help control that top, it's staying in the tank and it's going into your water. And that's where your color and your odor is coming into play where you've not had that before in that process. So you've got the mixer. Florida Rural Water brought the mixer down 2 days ago. They brought it down yesterday. And then one of our circuit riders also came down and worked with Rhett on well number 6. So there's your primary situation that you have got to take care of the maintenance on this. So over this period of time that this scrubber's been down since October, September, October timeframe, whatever, can't remember, September the 20, okay. So whenever Helene came through and knocked things out, so from then till now, you've had this water coming in into this tank. So when you don't have all of that happening, all of this buildup is happening inside of your ground storage tank. So you have a larger quantity, larger impact on that. Here's your other challenge that comes into play. I'm going to change colors now. So coming into your wells, this is not what your permit is. I'm using this as a number that you can understand. So if I have 100 gallons a minute out of each one of these, all right, so the next picture that I'm drawing, I've got well 5, 6, and 7. Let's say that wells 5, 6, and 7 each are designed to produce 100 gallons per minute. The house over here represents the city. This is a demand of the... I'm just making a description to explain about well 7. Yes, ma'am. So let's say that City of Apalachicola requires 300 gallons a minute a day for operation. That is equally divided between the 3 wells. They're designed to handle a certain capacity. Your challenge right now is well 7 is down for maintenance. The other challenge that comes into play is you've got some air issues going on with well 6. Well 5 is operating 24 hours a day right now. Well 6 is trying to keep up and work that, so there's some limitations. So because well 7 is down, now I've got to take that 300 gallons a minute and I've got to bring it over here and I've got to divide that up between these 2 wells. So each of these wells have to handle the demand for the system. When you overburden those wells, you have this scenario that's happening. You have turbulence, you have turbidity, you have all of that's being stirred up in this well that is being brought into a ground storage tank that has some equipment that's not operating, so you've got a lot of buildup. So that is exasperating your situation of discoloration and odor. And you're dealing with the chlorine injection that's working overtime. It's still being disinfected. It's just not to the level that DEP wants you to disinfect it at. They have not taken any bacteriological samples that have come back in a negative format. The problems that they have tested for and received are under the secondary treatment standards that are the aesthetic side of things that Florida enforces, but EPA does not. So I want you to understand that component. Your primary standards have not been impacted. You have still been receiving primary positive drinking water. The aesthetics of the odor and taste, it's not preferable. I get that part. It's not preferable. It is not preferable. It is not palatable. We understand that, and that's the aesthetic side of things. But that goes into that scenario of primary versus secondary. So again, I'm reiterating EPA standards. So the next step of what you've got is you've got well 6 has some air challenges. It is being over pumped right now. Well 5 is doing a great job. It's still being over pumped too. So you're dealing with that. So right now we've got the mixer here. So what Rhett and the team are doing is they are slowly draining and cleaning the ground storage tank, trying to get all of that collection of oxidation going on out of that tank. That takes time and effort. They started it yesterday. You worked through the night last night. So it's working. It takes time to drain a ground storage tank. You can't do it all at one time because they have to bypass the tank. They still have to maintain flow to the system. They still have to provide you with water. They can't take it down because you need pressure on the system. They can't bypass because you think it's bad now with your odor and color. If they were to bypass that tank altogether, all of this is going to go straight to your house. So they're still trying to alleviate a lot of that going into that tank. So it is an operational challenge for them until we can get this equipment going and operational. So that's where Florida Rural Water came in to assist. We put out an informational post yesterday to our Flawborn group, to our water tracker, to locate a scrubber for temporary that would match what they need for the system. We have Carabel, neighboring community, has reached out to say that they have this scrubber that they think can work. So the engineering staff are looking at that, trying to see if that will match, because as long as it's not over that capacity of what is needed for this, then it can work to help alleviate some of this until your new scrubber comes in at the end of July is the hopeful process. So that is what we're working on. We've got the mixer here. As soon as they get this tank cleaned, then the mixer goes into play, and we're going to work to try to get the scrubber to match from over what's happened at Carabel. So we're waiting to get that information to make sure they're going to match and they're going to work. Because if you require, it's just like your tires on your car. You can't, just because your neighbor has a tire doesn't mean that their tire is going to match your tire on your vehicle. They have to match. They have to be able to be like for like. Otherwise, you'll do more damage than good. So that's in that concept of that role. So the other component is EPA has pushed down money to the states as a result of Hurricane Helene and Milton impacts to the state of Florida. We call it the SAM funding. SAHMW is the acronym, but we call it SAM for our alphabet soup purposes. What we're trying to do, and we're working with your engineers to put all of this package together, is we're trying to get you another well number 8, to be added into the system, and another treatment process other than just chlorine. It's a carbon dioxide component. Because if y'all all remember, not too many years ago, you had consent order about your trihalomethanes and your HAA5s. That is all because too much chlorine, too much settling time, flushing mechanism. All of that is under control. All of that, you're not under that consent order. All of that is cleared. Your system has got all of that under control. That has to do with your amount of chlorine that goes into your system. So all of that component all plays into effect. We are putting into the application request with the engineers, the request for another well, because you don't want to get back into this scenario again that if you have one well down, that you're overburdening your other 2 wells. So you need to always have 3 wells in operation at all time. That way you have a 4th one that you can take out of rotation, and you can divide that flow and not have this turbidity and turbulence going on. That's the situation of the facts of what's happening out in the field. The quality of water in the area in the aquifer, it is not the highest quality. And that's what you're faced with this area all across the coast. One of the things that the Water Management District looks at is they look at the different regions and they look at the water supply. And I promise you, they're probably looking at a regionalization scenario where they're going to try to regionalize different utilities that would be willing to participate and try to go inland further or find another alternate type of water treatment like reverse osmosis, desalinization, that type, similar to what they do in the central and southern portions of the state. Other areas have gone inland. They've gone farther north to well fields and a more productive, higher quality aquifer for drinking water versus what you're faced with down here. So those are the pieces of information that I have, that I know from a factual standpoint, strictly the data and what information that I have.
Thank you, Alicia. Can you hold that board up so that the audience can get a better view of what you...
Rhett, we're going to have well number 7 back online real soon, aren't we?
Real quick, hopefully it's week.
So the operation of well 7 and what they have to do, they've drilled to the bottom of well 7. They are now doing what they do, a water injection in there to clean it, to see how far they are, to make sure they're in that production, that they've reached the bottom of the well that they need to get water production out of that. Once they do that, they're working on that today and tomorrow, and the goal is that by Monday that they will have all of that flushed and cleaned. They have to let it settle, and then they will start doing testing. So they have to take 2 samples 12 hours apart to check to make sure there's bacteriological clearance on that. Take first sample 12 hours, next sample, and then once they get those samples back and those show clear, then they can put that well online, and then that will help alleviate what's happening on the process with well 6, help to settle that some, and then once we get the details on the scrubber, if we can get a temporary scrubber and get all that in place, and Rhett and the team get that tank cleared out, then you would go into that process of taking down well 6, but not until all of that stuff is clear and in place, because if we get it cleaned out, you don't want to reintroduce that other into the tank and just go right back to where you were. You want clear water in, you want clear water out. So right now you've got that water coming in, you're not able to treat it with the scrubber and all of that to dissipate, to get that odor and all of that coming out, coming to your homes.
Thank you. So now I'm going to open up for the public.